I am Mufasa, protector of the circle, guardian of all who walk beneath the sun. I was king of the Pride Lands, ruler of the great savannah, the roaring voice that kept balance in the wild. My paws once pressed into the earth where the herds ran free, where the rivers carved their ancient paths, where life and death danced in an eternal rhythm. I have walked among the mighty and the meek, for all are bound by the same great truth, the circle of life. But I am more than a king. I am a father, I am a teacher. And though my body has returned to the dust, my spirit remains carried in the wind, whispered in the rustling grass, burning in the stars above. I once passed my wisdom to my son so he might understand the weight of his lineage. But these lessons are not just for kings. They are for all who seek to know their place in the world, for all who stand at the crossroads of fear and fate. Listen well. The circle moves, unbroken. The land remembers. The ancestors watch. And now so shall you. Hear now the lessons of the Pride Lands. There was a time when the Pride Lands thrived. The herds moved freely, the rivers flowed, and the lions hunted only what they needed. The land and its creatures existed in harmony. This was the way of things, as it had always been. But there was one who did not respect this balance. My brother Scar sought power for himself. He let his hunger for the throne blind him to the wisdom of nature. He took without giving, ruled with fear instead of care. In his reign the herds vanished, the land withered, and the lions starved. The circle of life was broken. A kingdom like the earth itself thrives when all things move together. Lions, antelope, and the grass beneath our feet are bound by the same law. Take too much and all will suffer. A true ruler does not command the land, he serves it. Only by honoring the circle can life endure. When Simba was a cub, I took him to the great plains at sunrise. Everything the light touches is our kingdom, I told him. A king's actions shape the land and the creatures within it. But Simba was young. He did not yet understand the weight of his choices. When Scar whispered lies into his ear, Simba believed he was responsible for my death. He ran, letting shame guide his steps. His absence allowed Scar to take the throne, and the land suffered. Yet just as one choice led to darkness, another could lead back to light. When Simba chose to return to accept his responsibility, hope was restored. His actions did not just change his fate, they changed the fate of all. Every action, every decision ripples outward. A leader must be mindful of what he sows, for his choices will shape the world long after he is gone. The past can hold us captive, but it can also teach us how to move forward. On the night of my death, the sky was filled with thunder. I had always watched over my pride, but that night I watched over my son. I gave my life so that Simba might live, though he did not yet understand why. He wandered far from home, believing he could outrun his past. He found laughter, companionship, and a life without worry. But the past is like the stars, it does not disappear, even when you close your eyes. When Nala found him, she brought news of the kingdom's suffering. When Rafiki showed him my spirit, he realized he could not escape who he was meant to be. The choices of yesterday create the world of today. But running from the past does not undo it. One must face what has been and choose to make it right. A lion who forgets where he came from is no lion at all. When Simba fled, he did not know he was walking the path toward wisdom. The road was not straight. It twisted, leading him through the jungle, into friendships and through trials that seemed to have no purpose, yet each step mattered. The carefree life he lived with Timon and Pumbaa taught him joy, resilience, and the strength to laugh in the face of hardship. And when he finally looked back, when he remembered me, his father, he saw how every moment had led him to the one truth he had avoided. Growth is not a straight line. The path to wisdom is winding, and sometimes one must step away to see clearly. But in the end, a lion must return home, for the past is not something to be feared. It is a foundation to stand upon. When Simba returned, he did not fight alone. He had Timon and Pumbaa who stood by him not because of blood, but because of bond. He had Nala, who reminded him of what he was meant to be. And he had the lionesses, who had suffered under Scar's rule and were ready to stand. Scar, in contrast, ruled with exclusion. He divided the lions and the hyenas, letting them fester in distrust. When the time came for battle, no one stood with him. He was alone. Strength is not in isolation, but in unity. A true king lifts others up, for when the pride is strong, the kingdom is strong. Those who rule by fear will find that when the storm comes, they stand alone. When Simba returned to Pride Rock, he was not alone. He carried with him the love of his father, the friendship of those who had stood by him, and the lessons of his journey. Each piece of his life came together, making him stronger. This is how the great kings rise, not by standing apart, but by drawing strength from all who walk with them. Scar, in contrast, ruled alone. He turned away wisdom, hoarded power, and let the hyenas suffer as much as the lions. And so when he needed allies, he had none. The power he had hoarded bottlenecked into nothing. A lion does not walk alone. True strength comes from the wisdom of elders, the love of friends, and the courage within. Those who refuse to share their burdens will find themselves crushed beneath them. When I ruled, the Pride Lands sang with life. The rivers and the grasslands, the creatures and the skies all moved in harmony. This was not by force, but by understanding. A king must listen, must know when to act and when to wait, must move with the rhythm of the world. Scar did not listen. He imposed his will with no regard for balance. The harmony of the land turned to dissonance, lions and hyenas at odds, the herds fleeing, the rivers drying. A song cannot be forced, it must be felt. A wise ruler moves in rhythm with the world, not against it. Listen to the voices around you and you will find the harmony that leads to prosperity. Ignore them and you will bring only discord and ruin. Simba was many things, a prince, an exile, a friend, a warrior. But it was not until he returned to Pride Rock that all these pieces came together. His past and present, his joys and sorrows, his strengths and doubts. Only when he embraced them all did he become king. His purpose, his place and his destiny converged into one. Scar, however, remained divided. He wanted power, but rejected responsibility. He sought loyalty, but bred resentment. He fed the hyenas while starving the lions. His rule was a kingdom that fractured until it collapsed. A leader must unify the pieces of his life, his past, his wisdom, and his people. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand, and a soul at war with itself cannot lead. For a long time, Simba believed he had to choose between the cub he was and the lion he had become. Between his carefree life with Timon and Pumbaa and his birthright as king, between the memory of his father and his own will. But the truth is, he was never meant to choose. He was meant to combine all these things into something greater. Scar, however, rejected what did not serve him. He cast aside family, friends, and tradition. He thought that by cutting away the past, he would become stronger. Instead, he was left hollow, a lion with nothing. You are not just one thing. You are your past and your future, your joys and your trials. Take all that you are and make it whole. Those who divide themselves will find there is nothing left. When Simba stood before Scar, he did not stand alone. He stood with the memory of his father. He stood with Nala, with Timon and Pumbaa, with the lionesses of the Pride Lands. He was part of something greater, and because of that, he could not be broken. Scar, in his final moments, found himself alone. He had severed every tie, turned away every hand that might have helped him, and when the hyenas turned on him, there was no one left to save him. To be strong is to be connected. A life spent building bonds will give you allies when the storms come. A life spent burning bridges will leave you without shelter when the fire turns on you. After the battle was won, Simba climbed Pride Rock and looked over his kingdom. The rain fell, cleansing the scars of the past. He roared, not just as a victor, but as a king who had reclaimed his place. Simba was no longer just the cub who ran, nor just the wanderer who laughed in the jungle. He was all of these things. He had taken his past, his joys, his mistakes, his losses, and woven them into the lion he had become. This is how a ruler is made. Scar, however, had let himself be consumed by envy and bitterness. He did not grow, he did not learn, and so, in the end, he was undone. A lion is not just his strength, nor just his wisdom, nor just his past. He is all of it. A king must take what he has learned and use it to guide him. Those who refuse to grow, who refuse to change, are left behind. The circle of life turns, vast and unbroken, carrying the echoes of those who came before and shaping the path for those yet to come. The wisdom of Mufasa is more than the counsel of a king. It is the foundation of a life well lived, a life where true strength is not found in power, but in balance, where every choice sends ripples beyond ourselves, shaping not only our fate but the fate of all who walk beside us, where the past is not a shadow to flee from, but a guide that shapes who we are meant to be. Simba's journey was not merely the reclaiming of a throne, it was the forging of a soul, the transformation from a lost cub into a lion worthy of his ancestors. His path reminds us that growth is neither straight nor easy. It twists through doubt, hardship and discovery. To become whole, one must learn when to stand alone and when to lean upon others. Scar's fate is the lesson of ruin. Those who take without giving, who divide instead of unite, who wield fear instead of wisdom, will find themselves abandoned in their final hour. Power without purpose crumbles. A legacy built on selfishness turns to dust. But know this, these lessons are not just for kings. They are for all who seek wisdom, for all who walk the winding path of destiny. A leader is not measured by the weight of his crown, but by the lives he lifts. A warrior is not made great by his strength, but by the fire within his heart. A life's worth is not counted by what is taken, but by what is given. So when the wind stirs the grass, when the stars blaze above the savannah, listen. The voices of the past still whisper, guiding those who have the courage to hear. And when your time comes, walk boldly, roar proudly, take your place in the great circle, remember who you are.